Executive Director at Hindsight, and we are so excited to be able to invite some of Fredericksburg's very own community leaders into this roundtable discussion. To my left, we have Mayor Mary Katherine Greenlaw, former Mayor Reverend Lawrence Davies, and President Janel Donohue. So today we're going to be discussing the topic of how we can make a community impact. So I'm taking more of the back seat today because we have some giants in the community who have already made a very notable impact in public office, in nonprofits, and probably a lot of other ways that I don't even know yet. But I want to start off by just kind of asking you guys some questions so that everyone can kind of get to know you all a little bit better. So I'll start with Janel. So where are you from and how did you get involved in what you're doing today?
So I'm from a little town called Crewe, Virginia. I'm a small town girl, so when I came to Fredericksburg in 1992, Central Park wasn't even here, but I thought it was a big city. It actually had a mall and fast food restaurants. And I went to Mary Washington College, and through my career at Quantico and then back in Fredericksburg in human resources, I really learned about giving back in corporate philanthropy, and then I had the opportunity to work at United Way.
Awesome.
I'm Lawrence Davies. I'm from Houston, Texas. And I'm in this area because I came to Howard to attend Howard University School of Divinity. And I joined the church in Fredericksburg, which is the daughter of the church that I pastored while I was here. That was a giant as well, okay. And so once the pastor here fell into ill health, they sent around to get someone to come in, and they were, fortunately for me, allowed me to come in and preach, and I was called to the Fredericksburg Baptist Church here. And having a background in social gospel, an interest in social gospel, I became involved in community affairs, and the rest is, I don't want to say history, but I don't want to say history.
It's not history, but it's living history.
Yeah.
Awesome, great. Well, I'm glad to have you here, Mayor Greenlaw.
Yes, well, I will say that as far as Reverend Davies is concerned, it's very much living history. We call him the mayor for life.
Oh, okay.
See how
but he
gracious
made
she
history.
is.
He made history here. He did. I'm Mary Katherine Greenlaw, and I am the mayor of Fredericksburg today. I am a native of this area. I got started as a young adult. My primary interest was mental health and the needs, the serious needs that this area had in lacking mental health services, and I got to know Reverend Davies then because we were both on the, in fact, we went to a national convention.
Right.
And I won't go into details there. I was actually very pregnant at the time, and Reverend Davies was picking his way across railroad tracks in the car. But anyway, long story short, as a result of my interest in improving the mental health services for the community, someone asked me to sit on the hospital board. And I spent many years in many various ways of volunteering on the hospital board, and one thing led to another, and I got on the planning commission of the city because I'd been in planning on the hospital board, and I enjoyed that so much. Somebody said, well, why don't you run for council? And I thought, well, that's good because the planning commission had developed this plan. I wanted to see that the council followed through on it, and next thing you know, I became mayor. So there you go. That's how I got it.
That's awesome. Just like that. No big deal. That's awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. And myself, I'm Gerard Hines, and I got started into this a year ago. And what I mean by this is becoming involved in having a community impact was something that my wife actually, I'm married as well, she actually inspired me to get involved in making an impact in the community. And my parents actually had an idea of starting a nonprofit, and they came to me with the idea of collaborating together. And my first response to them was no, because you're coming out of college and you want to spread your wings and find your own way. I don't want to come back and start working with my parents. But over time, I started seeing that on my spare time when I wasn't studying, I was coming up with plans and strategic plans to be able to really make hindsight reality. I'm like, all right, I'm already working for these guys, so what am I trying to front and act like it's not something that I want to be a part of? And so I really love this community. And I went to Hugh Mercer Elementary and Walker Grant Middle School, and then I'm an alum of James Monroe High School as well. And so I know the community very well, but it's changed so much over the years. I guess a question I have for you guys is, what are some of the changes that you've seen, as you've been in the Fredericksburg community?
Well, I've been here longer than any of you, so I'll start. Because I remember when the road that is right out here, Princess Anne Street, was Route 1. Mm-hmm. What you know today as Route 1 is actually a bypass. And the city was afraid to die when they ran the road outside of town. And then, of course, 95 came along. All of those were significant changes, but I can tell you that while the growth outside in the counties has been very dramatic, and our growth is dramatic too, we're one of the fastest growing cities in the state, percentage-wise. I feel like Fredericksburg has still managed to feel like a small town. Number one, that's important. But number two, it has also maintained its ability to look out for each other and be a community. But number three, the come-heres have added so much in diversity, in other perspectives, in enrichment of arts and culture, that I don't begrudge the growth at all. I'm not, as a native, people say, well, don't you hate it? And I said, no, I don't hate it. We wouldn't have what we have today if we didn't have that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the growth is good, and I love how you put it, where we still kind of keep that community feel, but it's still managed to expand at the same time, which is, what's some of the changes that you've seen?
Well, like I mentioned before, I came to the community as an opportunity to go to Mary Washington College. So one of the biggest changes that I saw was that the college changed from a college to a university. And it was really hard to accept because it felt change to my alma mater. But I met my husband at Mary Washington College, and then I raised my kids in this region. And so now I am so excited that I live in a community that has a university. Because it adds to the culture, as you were saying, the arts and what we have in the community. So I agree with you. I think the change that I've seen are all positives. I'm not sure how we've done it, but we've kept that small town feel that, especially if you live and work here, it's a community. And it's a community that cares about one another. And so that hasn't changed since I started at Mary Wash.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Reverend Davies, what are some of the changes that you've seen in the community since you've been here?
Well, I'm going to say something redundant, because I think that one of the outstanding things that we can focus on, and maybe should focus on in the future, is the maintenance of that community spirit. And this has been in spite of some things that would mitigate against community. Because when I came here, the FMC plans offered employment, not only to people in Fredericksburg, but people around Fredericksburg. It was open 24 hours a day, and it was the major employer. But they closed. It was cellophane producing, and they closed. And when they closed, people had to go beyond this area to get jobs. Some went to Richmond, but the majority of them seem to have gone to the Washington, D.C. area. And of course, it meant that before 95, I don't know if 95 was open when they closed.
Was it 92 or 90?
Well,
No, it was 62.
it was 95 opened after I got here.
Oh.
Because I remember being out and seeing cars on 95 waiting for Fredericksburg to cut the ribbon.
Wow.
So that they could get through to the north. And Joe Rowe was, Josiah Rowe was mayor at that time. And I was pleased to be able to offer a prayer, I think, at that ribbon cutting.
Wow.
And so the cars went on. 95 has never been able to control all of the traffic that it's trying to get onto it since it opened.
Yes.
And for years, they continued to work on 95, getting additional entrances and exits and that sort of thing, improvements, so that for, I guess, 20, 25 years or more, they worked without stopping on some part of 95. But it offered an opportunity for people, I got off, you see, that's what happens.
It was all very relevant. Yes.
But it gave people an opportunity to go both ways,
right,
and get jobs. But they had to leave before the sun rise to get to the jobs on time.
Why was that?
Because the jobs were around D.C., Maryland area, and some of Northern Virginia too. But in order, there were so many cars on the road at that time, the traffic was slow. And you had to get out there early to get to the place on time. Now, they have improved transportation since that time, public transportation since that time. But that was the thing that they saw. And of course, I started, I said, community has been maintained, spirit. If you leave before sun up and you have to come back after sundown, it's difficult to have a community spirit.
Right.
But it has been maintained in this area despite that.
So, kind of continuing the conversation, what's one of the intersections that you guys see when it comes to economy and this issue of poverty? You know, there's a lot of discussion, and even our organization, that's what we're geared towards, helping to reduce in the community. But what are some intersections that you all see, whether that's opportunities or things where you see the two having a correlation, you know, the economic stability of a community and the poverty? Hopefully that question makes sense.
I have to think about it a little bit.
It makes sense, but you need to give me a chance.
All right, I will start. I will say, first of all, that it's a great tragedy in this nation that as wealthy as we are, that we have people who are hungry. And we have, when you have high growth, you have, land becomes desirable, housing becomes desirable, which raises the price. But not everybody in any community is going to make a high wage. We are always going to have the low income jobs, and there must be housing. So there's an intersection that most communities today are struggling with, and that we are, specifically here in Fredericksburg, we actually have an affordable housing initiative where we are trying to gather the data to see what it is we don't have, what it is we can do to encourage that. And we are working with the George Washington Regional Commission, and we're trying to engage our partners in the counties to work with us to see what it is we need to do. But when you talk about the intersection of economics and poverty, I think housing is one of the big ones, because sometimes the more economically successful a community is, doesn't necessarily mean that all of the jobs that are created are family sustaining incomes. And so that's a challenge, I think.
Yeah.
I would definitely echo that. I don't know if it could be defined as an intersection, but I think one of the struggles we have is really defining poverty. If we define it as the federal government defines it since the 1970s, for a family of 4, that's based on income, $24,000. And I don't believe, and my organization doesn't believe, that income determines poverty, that there are greater needs, one of them being affordable housing. And so we are trying to make our community aware of what's called the ALICE population. And you were kind of mentioning this as you were talking about, those struggling just to make it. There are hardworking individuals. So ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed.
Right. And it's a huge population.
It's a huge population.
And it's an employed population. That's the interesting thing about it.
Right.
Absolutely. In the state of Virginia, 11% of individuals or households are in poverty. 28% are considered ALICE. And these are individuals that barely make a basic survival budget, and one crisis sends them spiraling. And it's because housing is expensive, it's because food is expensive, it's because childcare is expensive. No one has done anything wrong here, but as a community, for economic development and for those in need, we have to find a way to be able to sustain families, to be able to live beyond a basic survival budget. And ALICE is a forgotten population because we base poverty many times on income, and income doesn't define need.
Right. Yeah, and that's a huge point, because with poverty, when you only base it off of income, then your only solutions can be let's find a way to increase income, or have an individual have an opportunity to increase income. When poverty, you can win the lottery and you can lose it all in a matter of weeks if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't have the right opportunities and resources. And so there has to be a conversation about poverty being defined more than just income, or more than just.
Well, a lot of people that are considered in poverty have resources. They have resources through the Department of Social Services. But once that individual does strive to make more income, they immediately lose those benefits. And so some people are better off being considered in poverty than making a higher wage, because then they can't sustain it. We need to support them at a higher level to their self-sufficient. So it's a difficult place to be in, but we also have a community that's working toward that. And hindsight, like an organization like that, can be a great partner.
Well, I want to scale it back a little bit more, because there's a lot of people who may be watching this video who want to make the impact that you all have made and are making in the community, but may not necessarily know what it feels like to be in your role, or being someone who's making a positive impact in the community. So, as for yourself, what are some of the day-to-day operations that you all go through, in your current roles or in previous roles?
I can go back to previous roles, because my feeling is that service is the rent we pay for the space that we use in this world. And if we're service oriented, then we're going to have an opportunity toward progress. One of the things that I shouldn't get into this, but when I came here, our major industry was really tourism. And tourism versus business were the main things. After we got here and things changed, there was an effort toward making retail, I guess, the major industry. And here again, I sound like a prophet of doom, but it comes out of things that are negative. Our downtown emptied at one point in our history because the downtown stores, well, the mall opened up in Spotsylvania.
Right. And
when the mall opened up in Spotsylvania, the big stores all moved to Spotsylvania because it gave them an opportunity of expanding. And that's when retail began to raise its head. It had an effect on Fredericksburg when all of the downtowns, major downtown stores, moved into the mall.
Right.
And it meant for a while that we were trying to improve our downtown area so that it could bring in more revenue and taxes and that sort of thing. But that wasn't working too well. We joined one of the state or what is it, downtown organization, you know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, and so as a result of that, we began to look at Northern Virginia, and our effort in the downtown area shifted because we felt we couldn't compete with the retail going on elsewhere, and so we needed some significant attraction. So we looked toward Northern Virginia, and we saw that their attractions were historic, preservation, and dining, fine dining. And so our downtown began to emphasize, as we revitalized the downtown, began to emphasize retail, our history.
Okay.
All right. We began to talk about our history and focus on our history.
Right.
And emphasize our history. While we also emphasize the need for fine dining. And so artifacts and antiques.
Right. It's
yeah.
huge.
Yeah. And so we moved into that area, and there's still evidence that antiques and history producing businesses and fine dining is emphasized in our downtown area.
Man, which is such an interesting combination. You wouldn't think that, you know, putting those things together would help to be able to bridge the gap, you know, between those two industries and two businesses. I guess in 30 years from now, where do you guys see the Fredericksburg community in a role? I guess let me give some context for that, because that's a big question. But in the role of helping to reduce poverty in the community and in growing in the Virginia state, you know, 30 years from now. And there's no wrong answer.
Okay, let me get into this because I probably won't have another opportunity. But MICA is an organization that was formed here.
Right.
And as she indicated, both of them indicated, housing is important in the terms of what is poverty producing and what is not. And so there had been a dearth of housing in this area. And some people who had property here were beginning to move out because the value of property was beginning to move upward. And so the churches in the downtown area began to focus on the fact that there were homeless people, and we were trying to find housing to help them, low income housing, to help them. And the churches got together at the forefront of this effort. And they moved from community to community and found resistance to low-income housing coming in because they said that they would drain the resources for people who were in the poverty arena. And so eventually we did find a place out near the, what is that?
Yeah, the coffee shop?
No, the industrial park.
Industrial park.
Oh, okay.
And so they moved the homeless, the homeless shelters into that area, so that they would have a place for homeless people to go. And then they developed resources around this so that they would try to help them to get out of that situation and on their own feet. And so this was a part of the history of Fredericksburg too.
Wow. Yeah. Well, what about you all? 30 years.
Wait, but let me say this though. I said the churches were at the forefront,
right.
But there were community support. There was community support for it. And the Fredericksburg Baptist Church, I guess, took the lead in the MICA project. And the others followed, but the churches are still working on the same problem in different ways.
And to this day, MICA is still...
Yes,
MICA's vital.
Yeah. So this is how MICA began, trying to find housing appropriate for people like this, or make it available at all.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. What do you guys think of 30 years from now?
I'm trying to see what my vision would be. I see us continuing as a community to collaborate and becoming better collaborators. Okay. I've seen this improve, at least in my work and where we are, that people have always been working together. The church is working together. But I think we're growing and becoming a little smarter in a community, that those who focus on youth and children are collaborating. I see it in my world weekly. Those around affordable housing are collaborating instead of trying to figure it out by themselves, or taking the skills and the strengths of other organizations and other people and using it to their advantage. Partnerships are starting to form like we've never formed before. Our organization is now partnering with the community colleges. We're starting to collaborate and talk to the governments beyond just our nonprofits. We're no longer just collaborating nonprofits. We're using businesses to help us solve problems. So I see us being in 30 years even greater. I think we're doing good, but I think greater collaborators to solve some of the issues that we have. It seems that we get close to solving one issue, another one has grown. And so we're always going to be trying to solve opportunities and challenges, but we'll be better collaborators.
Right. And Mayor Greenlaw was talking to me about the Continuum of Care, which I had heard about before, but the collaboration in the community is always growing, So to round out our discussion, I want to ask one other question. So in your day-to-day operations and work, what is one of the greatest challenges that you have faced in your career, and how did you find the willpower or motivation to push through and still work out what you work?
Just one.
Yeah.
Just one.
Just one, because I know that we face many challenges in this line of work, but what are some of the things that have helped you go through your challenges and have the motivation to still push through and serve in the community?
Well,
I was start so they'll have a top to I won't have to be the one who closes this out. As you have community support, she's just indicating the other support, spiritual and business support, collaboration. And I see the future of Fredericksburg depending upon that collaboration. And I can see that collaboration expanding. And that's where I see. And I say amen to what she said.
Well, you really paved the road for that collaboration. I think those who are already in Fredericksburg, from Fredericksburg, the come-heres, all of that you all truly paved the road for us to be successful in the collaboration that we're growing now.
As far as the challenges are concerned, I'm not going to name a specific one. I'm going to say that consistently in my work as a counselor and mayor, the constant challenge is communication. And that is met only by attempting to understand. Attempting to understand either why somebody didn't hear the same thing you heard, or just simply getting to people. You know, the one of the biggest frustrations I have is people saying, I didn't know that was going on. Well, I didn't know you were having that meeting. I didn't know this issue was there. We'll say, well, you know, it was on the website, it was here, it was there. You know, we even, you know, occasionally send out mailers to people and we still get told, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But honestly, in any line of service to a community, the important thing is that the community understand each other and listen to each other and have the opportunity to hear each other.
Okay. Now you understand why she's the mayor. Insight and wisdom combined.
Yep. Yes. You know, awesome mayor. So we're very lucky to have you.
Well, I spoke to the installation of the officers at the Student Cooperative Association of Lafayette Elementary today. And I made the same speech to the 8-year-olds that I make to the Chamber's leadership group. And it begins by caring. And if you care enough about something other than yourself, you become a leader because you work at it. If you care about the other person, or if you care about your school, that's where it starts.
Great point. That's a great point.
That's deep. I've heard so many gems from this conversation, and I think that that's the perfect point to end off on this last question for our young people. And I say our young people like I'm not a young person, but for the younger generation coming up behind us, you know, what's one word of advice that you would give to the younger generation about getting involved with service and becoming greater leaders?
Well, I would say the same thing. I would say find something that you're passionate about that is larger than you or your career, something you care about that you can find a way to help with.
Awesome.
That's so complete, I can't improve on it. Yeah, well, that I think that really is at the core of all of it. Compassion, caring, communication.
And I'll just challenge myself to add to that, but I don't know that I want. I think it's saying yes to those opportunities.
Yes.
To care, to be compassionate, to have empathy for others, but say yes to those opportunities. I found that the times that I said yes to helping someone, or the times I said yes to go beyond who I thought I was, are the times that challenged me most but took me to the next level. Right. So seek out opportunities to say yes to positive things that change your life.
And to get to that, you have to believe in yourself.
Yes.
Right. That's so
Don't assume you can't.
That's awesome. Yeah, this has been an honor of a lifetime to sit at this table with you all and hear the many excerpts of wisdom that you all have shared. And I think, you know, what you were speaking about as far as communication, this is just one other opportunity that we can help with that communication to get other people involved in making an impact in the community, collaborating, starting businesses, making those connections in the community. And so we're just so happy to be able to have great community leaders such as yourselves. And so we're very, very grateful that you all have taken this time out to do this on a rainy Friday evening after a ribbon cut. So thank you all so much. Did you have any other things that you wanted to share?
No, but God bless you in your work.
Yes.
Thank you.
We wish you well and offer our support in any way possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys are my heroes. So thank you.